Hi, everyone. This is Tan. Welcome back to another episode of the Man to Man Coverage Podcast. Today, we'll be doing another episode recapping the 2021 NFL season. Today, I'm joined with my good friend and co host, Mason.
What's up, guys?
So, last episode, we each picked three games to talk about. We talked about topic and then we went in to week three. And that's how this episode's going to work. So the first game I'm talking about is the Thursday night game between the Washington football team and the New York Giants. This was a really interesting game. We kind of alluded to it last episode, but Washington gets the win. And at first, after they won, I was like, good job, nice, they won. But thinking about the game a bit more, their defense has been disappointing. This was all a unit I think we thought would be top 10, and it's, I think, been bottom 10. The front seven's been nice, but the linebacking core and secondary has really not been delivering. And Washington has a tough schedule still. They still play a lot of great offenses. They have the Bills this coming week. They still have the Chiefs, the Cowboys, the Raiders on this schedule. That's a lot of tough games coming up. And I like their offense. Terry McLaurin went off, which was awesome to see. And they also have, him, Logan Thomas, Antonio Gibson. There's some nice players, but I don't know if Washington's going to be this 9-10 win team that me and a lot of other people thought they would be. And then the Giants, oh boy. They were missing a lot of things there. I'm usually not someone who really kind of overreacts to preseason, but I remember there's this one preseason report where it was like the Giants were getting to like fights with their own team. And at first I was like, whatever, it's preseason. But after kind of seeing Thursday's game, kind of that undisciplined nature really showed through. There's a lot of penalties, drops, and I'm starting to kind of get concerned about the Giants. Daniel Jones is kind of for me. Um, I don't know if he's the answer or not. He's mobile, but he's not someone like a Lamar Jackson, Conway, Josh Allen, or even a Russell Wilson. He's really elite at it. And he's not someone like a Derek Carr or Kirk Cousins, where he's a really great pocket passer. He's kind of good at everything, which in this league can be bad in a weird way. So I don't know about him, where the Giants kind of want to take him. But Joe Judge, I liked a lot last season. The Giants got some ups and wins last year. However, this season, I'm just not seeing it. So does he maybe get fired after this year? Saquon Barkley, I don't know where he's at, trying to find him. Jason Garrett, I think, needs to go. This Giants team is just not looking good at all. People have been talking about Saquon Barkley getting traded, which I could see possibly to I don't know what team, like maybe the Ravens, if they could use him. But yeah, so overall, kind of disappointed both teams. Mason, if you want to share your thoughts on those two teams real quick.
Yeah, Taylor Heineke. I think he balled out in his first regular season start. Really impressed with him.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I was thinking the same thing with the Washington defense. I really thought this was going to be a top five elite defense. That was going to be very hard to score on. Their pass rush got shut down week one, and then this week their secondary got absolutely like obliterated by Daniel Jones, which is not any. It's not a good thing, for sure. Terry McLaurin balled out, finally getting the national attention he deserves.
Mm-hmm.
But talking more about the Giants, I'm just really disappointed in this game for him. I think Daniel Jones played actually a really good game. I'm not even high on him, but when Daniel Jones has a good game, you really should be winning because you don't get many of those. Um, but yeah, Kenny Galladay is 2 games in and he's already getting mad at Jason Garrett, which I think is a very bad sign. And I'm on Kenny Galladay's side because he's getting paid all this money and he's really hasn't been utilized or even been targeted or plays drawn up for him, which I think is absurd because he's easily the best receiver on the team if you actually know how to use him. I mean, Slayton's good and all, but Kenny Galladay has shown he can be a 1,000-yard, 12 touchdown receiver plenty of times. The offensive line continues to suck for the Giants as well. Um, I think I would give Joe Judge a little bit more leeway. I think Jason Garrett is the real problem on that team.
Mm-hmm.
I he had so many pieces in with the Cowboys. He's had a lot of pieces with the Giants, and he hasn't been able to do anything. It's kind of mind-boggling how he has a job, honestly, as an offensive coordinator. Maybe as like a scouting person or some other developmental coach, but I don't see him as like an actual play caller. It hasn't worked out clearly in New York. Um, but yeah, their defense is also kind of like the Washington defense. I didn't expect them to be top five, but I expect them to be pretty good.
Mm-hmm.
And I think they've disappointed as well. I think James Bradbury had a fantastic year last year. Not necessarily taking like a whole step back, but not as good as he was last year. Jabril Peppers had a fantastic year last year. Hasn't been on the same level through 2 weeks. And same with Leonard Williams, who got a massive contract. It kind of seems like he's been quiet these first couple weeks. But yeah, two teams in the NFC East, I think, both going to make a push for that. What's it called? The NFC East title. I think every team is 1-1 at the moment.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Giants are 0-2.
Oh yeah, Giants are on too. Yeah, that's Giants are not looking great, but I think Washington needs to step it up if they want to win this division because I think Cowboys look sharp and even the Eagles look like a young and exciting team.
Yeah, I like the moment or the point you brought up about Kenny Galladay. He was like borderline elite in Detroit, and I just don't know where he's at. Still looking for him. The NFC East was disappointing as a whole. The Eagles 49ers game was one of the most ugly games I've seen as an Eagles fan. They should have won that game. And that Cowboys Chargers game, oh my gosh, that was disappointing to say the least. So yeah, I don't really have that much else to say. Mason, I think you brought up the good points. I love the way you described the Giants. You sounded like a Panther. You're like, I'm not mad, I'm just disappointed. and yeah, it seems unfortunate. So when I move from the NFC East to the AFC East, you have the Bills Dolphins game, Mason, to talk about if you want to start talking about that one.
Yeah, so I think for a majority, like I think pretty much all the rest of the games besides this one, we picked like really close, entertaining games. But I picked a game that was kind of a cause for concern for the Dolphins. I mean, the Bills defense played really good, but I don't think the Bills defense is some top tier defense. It's solid, but it's not like a top five defense. And the fact you
Mhm.
can't score a single point is really absurd. My main issue is them not running the football at all. Like Miles Gaskin has proved that he should be that number one running back, and they ran the ball like 6 times with Miles Gaskin, which I think is that's not you're not going to win football games giving your best running back 6 carries. Tua went down with an injury, which I think is also a big concern. It was said fractured ribs, so he's going to miss week 3. He's going to be week to week after that. But Tua wasn't even playing that good before the injury, but now after the injury, I don't see him improving at all. Because fractured ribs, it's not going to heal overnight. It's going to be something that lingers with him pretty much the entire year. So it's really going to affect him. And I think it's the case of last year. Last year, the defense was really solid. Offense was pretty
Mhm.
disappointing. I think it's kind of pretty much the same thing. Jalen Waddle has actually impressed me a lot through 2 weeks. But yeah, Jacoby Brissett, I don't think he's going to get it done for this Dolphins team. And talking about the Bills won 35-0, but honestly, the offense still hasn't looked like it's shown up yet. I mean, last year, Josh Allen was an MVP candidate. Stephon Diggs had the most receiving yards, and Josh Allen honestly had a below average game, in my opinion.
Mhm.
He had barely had a 50% completion percentage, which in the NFL is not good. He had under 200 yards passing. He had an interception. But the big thing I think they won this game was because they actually utilized the run game. Last week against the Steelers, it was pretty much non-existent whatsoever. One of the reasons they lost the game. This game, Devin Singletary has a beautiful like 40-yard touchdown or something crazy like that. Zach Moss has 2 touchdowns. They had over 170 yards of rushing. So yeah, just them utilizing their run game because it's not that it's honestly pretty solid because their offensive line is really good. Um, but yeah, I think they need to incorporate that more, and I think that's why they got the big win here. But yeah, big cause of concern for the Dolphins offense for sure.
Yeah, Josh Allen's looking a lot like his 2019 self. We would have those big plays, but it's just the consistency. It's weird how the Bills are going in reverse. Jumping ahead a bit to the week 3 kind of predictions and stuff, but I'm excited for this Washington Bills games because both units have been underwhelming. the Washington defense and the Bills offense. So that's going to be interesting to see how that goes down. Yeah, but the Bills kind of before the season started around June, July, I'm like, I don't know if this team will be great to the extent they were last year. Then at the end, I kind of was on the Bills hype train. I think I had them winning the Super Bowl. I think we both did. But kind of those June, July concerns are coming back. Their defense reminds me of the Packers. Like they're not a top 10 unit, but they're pretty good. I like how the Bills are using the running game more. I really like the running backs they have. It's just they need to get this passing game figured out. They need to do it pretty quickly because they have a very difficult schedule. Like you have the Buccaneers, you have the Saints, they have the Titans. I believe they have the Chiefs. Things don't get easier for Buffalo. And then the Dolphins, their defense was like top tier last year. Is really great. This year it still looks a bit, or it looks a bit worse in a sense. I don't know if Jalen Phillips is playing the rookie. If so, he's been pretty quiet. Um, and the offense is pretty concerning. I was not a fan of the Dolphins taking Jalen Waddle in the draft over Penei Sewell. And I didn't like the pick. And I'm still not the biggest fan of it. Waddle's been nice, as Mason alluded to, but they had other wide receivers on that team who they could have used, like Devontae Parker, Preston Williams, and others. So yeah, that whole Jalen Waddle pick, I'm still not very happy with that. And then I think they fired the OCs from last season. The new ones they brought in still not looking that great. The offense looked really bland, and it's really hard to score 0 points in the NFL. Like that's a very difficult task to do. And Jacoby Brissett's like a top tier backup quarterback. Like he has a nice arm. He's a very nice person. He's smart. And the fact that for him to go out there and just put up 0 points for me speaks more to the Dolphins side of things. They play the Raiders this week, which is going to be interesting. I have the Raiders winning, but yeah, I just Miami, the concerns are kind of starting to come about, which is not a good thing. And I think the AFC East is going to be something where I think the Dolphins will be kind of a 6-win team. I think they just win 2 to 3 games, and I think it's a battle between New England and Buffalo. I really like the Patriots, the way they are looking, so I think they'll keep it close with the Bills to an extent. Mason, do you have anything else to say about this game? If not, I'll move on to my second game.
I think you nailed everything perfectly.
All right, so the second game I have is the Las Vegas Raiders against the Pittsburgh Steelers. The main topic of discussion for this game is going to be the Steelers and mainly the offense. Before the season, I was kind of high on Big Ben, and most people were like, okay, he played pretty well last year. He had some nice moments, but I'm just not seeing it with him. His accuracy has gone down, his arm strength has gone down, and he doesn't offer that mobility. And really, this offense has been kind of underwhelming. Najee Harris, yeah, he had that nice like stiff arm play, which was pretty cool. Just one of those football moments, like, yeah. But besides that, he's not getting the best rushing yards. Deontay Johnson's been good, but Chase Claypool, Juju Smith-Schuster has been really underwhelming. I know people like to joke about Juju, but like last year he was like kind of like a pretty nice wide receiver. This year he's kind of dipped down. And I honestly wonder if the Steelers should make a move at quarterback. I know it might sound ridiculous, but this was a very winnable game. Even with the Steelers superstar defender TJ Watt out, there was still like a very close game throughout, and just the offense couldn't make the plays. I know the Raiders defense is pretty great. It is pretty nice. I like it a good amount, but still, I think some of it falls on the quarterback play. My kind of thought process is maybe they go out and sign a Cam Newton, which I know might sound crazy, but at least Cam offers you some mobility. And the Steelers play a lot of high scoring offenses. You have Green Bay, Minnesota, the Ravens twice, the Browns twice, the Seahawks, just a lot of teams still left on the schedule that are going to put up a lot of points. Can you go to that level? I don't know. I like their defense a lot, but this is a league we need an offense to complement a defense. We've seen up the Bears and the Jaguars. They had elite defenses for a couple of years, but they just never had the offenses to back them up, and ultimately those teams failed. So Pittsburgh, they really need to get the quarterback situation figured out. I'm trying to think of this, like maybe even training for like a Marcus Mariota. I know he's injured at the moment, but training for him, he could offer some mobility. I just think that's something they need. So yeah, very concerning for Pittsburgh because week one, I was kind of like, oh yeah, Mike Tomlin, this team's gonna be winning 9 games. They still could, but after this week, I was like, oh, okay, maybe not. And then the Raiders, Derek Carr looks great. It's nice to see him play at such a high level. I really like this Raiders team. I don't know if I'm not on the hype train yet. I alluded to this in my prediction video for week 3, but the Raiders still have some tougher opponents on the schedule. I want to see how they do against teams like the Cowboys, Chiefs, Chargers. But I really like the way they're looking so far. That defense is playing nice. Max Crosby is really breaking out, and I always liked him. I always thought he had a really nice mix of like speed, power with burst, kind of like almost Danielle Hunter esque. And I feel like with that Yannick Ngakoue signing they made, he's been playing great, which I like. I like Yannick Ngakoue. He was a pretty great player in Jacksonville. And then last year with the Vikings and Ravens, he didn't pan out. So I'm glad he's doing well. So the Raiders, I don't know if I'm saying, oh yeah, the Super Bowl contenders, yeah, yay, but I think they're looking pretty good. And I think that they're gonna make the AFC West a lot more interesting than expected. So that's kind of my thoughts on this game. Mason, if you want to add on to it.
Yeah, Steelers defense actually didn't play bad for what they were given. They had like 4 missing starters, being TJ Watt and Devin Bush being the main two, which is huge for that defense. That's like the 2 superstars alongside Minka Fitzpatrick on that defense. But yeah,
Minka's
they're
been
off.
underwhelming this year.
Yeah, their offense though is yeah, Big Ben really hasn't been showing much. Um, Before this year, I was big on Deontay Johnson taking that wide receiver one step. It's looking like he really has
Mhm.
been taking that step since Claypool and Juju. All memes aside, they really haven't been anywhere besides like TikTok. I've seen them more on TikTok than I have in the end zone this year. So, um, yeah, Najee Harris, he had a nice receiving touchdown, but other than that, been a little disappointing, and I think that is kind of attributed to the offensive line, which I think has been pretty bad. Like Tanner said, I think you need to get a mobile quarterback because Big Ben, he's not mobile, and it's not his fault the offensive line sucks. But if the offensive line sucks, you kind of need to have someone that can move around, and Big Ben is kind of just like a turtle back there. Um, and it's not like prime Big Ben where like if you get on him, he'll kind of like throw you off of him because he's so like big, hence the name Big Ben. But like he's kind of older now, so he'll probably get sacked more often. But yeah, talking about the Raiders, I was really impressed with them. I think Derek Carr has been really, really impressive through 2 weeks. Bryn, what's his name? Bryn Edwards, I think.
Oh, Brian Edwards.
Yeah, Brian Edwards. He has been fantastic so far through 2 weeks. Kind of looking like a wide receiver one for him. And Henry Ruggs has been actually really good as well. Had a nice deep bomb, burned 2 Steelers DBs for like a 60-yard bomb of a touchdown. Darren Waller playing like Darren Waller. And the offensive line has actually been not too bad for what they did in the offseason. It's not been great. It's not been like top 10, but it's not been like bottom 10, which I thought it would be. Then again, things can change throughout the year. Like Tanner said, Max Crosby has really become a player of his own. He was in the 2019 draft class and he was really good his rookie year, kind of took a step back last year. But this year he's been turning it up. Been an absolute stud for him. But yeah, I'm really impressed with the Raiders. I think John Gruden and Derek Carr have finally figured it out. I think they're going to be like a wild card team, maybe like a 7th or 6th seed. But I think they have finally like meshed together well enough to where they both can succeed. Because Derek Carr, I don't think he's had this good of a start to a year since like 2016 maybe.
Mhm.
And same with John Gruden. I've been really impressed with John Gruden. Past 2 years, I really haven't been. But really liking what I'm seeing from this whole Raiders team through 2 weeks.
Yeah, I think this needs to be a very big year for the Raiders because there's rumors about Carr and Gruden not getting along, and the Raiders the past 2 years have started out well and then they missed the playoffs. So this needs to be kind of a big season for them. It seems like Raiders fans are happy. So Mason, if you want to go into your second game.
Yeah, so My second game would be the Cardinals versus the Vikings. Home opener for the Cardinals, revenge game for Patrick Peterson. And let me just tell you right off the bat, this is not me being biased or anything. Patrick Peterson had a horrible game. Like Kyler, I saw the stat from I think it was Pro Football Focus or whatever. And Kyler Murray had like a perfect passer rating when targeting Patrick
Oh
Peterson.
no.
It was like 6 for 6, 100 something yards and 2 touchdowns. I'm like, oh no. But other than that, Patrick Peterson honestly did good in the run game. Pass game, not so much. But honestly, I want to talk about the Vikings offense. They really impressed me. Kirk Cousins, I think, gets a lot of hate, but he played really, really well. Was really efficient. Justin Jefferson, Adam Thielen both had big catches that game. Dalvin Cook absolutely carved up the defense. I think Dalvin Cook is so good. He's just so elusive, and he gives me like, I'm not saying he is LaShawn McCoy, but he gives me LaShawn McCoy esque tendencies with his juke moves, able to evade defenders. Absolute stud. Then their offensive line really impressed me as well because I thought their offensive line was pretty bad last year. But it did pretty good, opening up a lot of holes for Dalvin Cook to run through and to protect Kirk Cousins, who only got sacked once by Marcus Golden. And then on the defensive side of the ball, Daniil Hunter, absolute beast, man. I mean, he's so fast in the backfield. Like he was just an absolute stud. He was wrecking havoc on both sides of the field, left and right tackles. But yeah, absolute stud. And then talking about the Cardinals a little bit more, Rondale Moore, that he is in early contention for offensive rookie of the year. I mean, through 2 weeks, he has been an absolute stud. I mean, through 2 weeks, he's already been better than Andy Isabella has been his whole career, for being honest. Like Andy Isabella has been horrible, and Rondale Moore is an absolute stud. And like Tanner was texting me during the game, I think Kyler Murray continues his MVP campaign. He won NFC Offensive Player of the Week as of this morning, Wednesday. What's the September 22nd? He won NFC Offensive Player of the Week. Absolute stud from him. But yeah, overall, the Vikings, I feel like it was like a typical Vikings loss. They just lost because of a missed field goal at the end. They did everything right to win the game. Both teams did, but only one team can come out as a victor, and that happened to be the Cardinals because the Vikings, Greg Joseph, I mean, I feel like he was horrible with the Browns. I'm pretty sure he played with the Browns. And then he's been pretty bad with the Vikings. I really don't see I really just feel bad for the Vikings because an 0-2 start is never good for a team. And I think this team has a lot of talent, especially their offense. I think they can definitely turn it around and make a late season push, but they really got to get going on both sides of the ball, especially defense. I know I was talking about Daniil Hunter and stuff, but you let up 27 points to the Bengals. And then the Cardinals obviously have an explosive offense, but it's never good to let up 34 points. But I think both teams should come away from this game thinking like they should be proud of their team because I think both teams played really well.
They should have the Vikings is you have great plays from defensive players. Like Daniil Hunter has a sack, came down, started a pick. Harrison Smith makes a nice play in the secondary, but they don't string those plays together. It's like, oh, there's a nice play. Then the defense falters the next play. And that's my main issue. That also happened in week one is that the Vikings are not stringing these great defensive plays together. And that's going to really be an issue for them when they play the Seahawks this week. I like what you mentioned about Dalvin Cook. He reminds me a mix of LaShawn McCoy, kind of his speed, and Todd Gurley, not the arthritis part, like the power part. Like that's kind of who he reminds me of. He is so fun to watch.
I
Rondell
know.
Moore's been great. He's been one of the best rookies on the offensive side of the ball. He's been better than even like someone like Kyle Pitts, who has been underwhelming so far, but that's typical for rookie Titans. But yeah, I don't have that much to say about this game. It was a pretty great game. I was guessing the Vikings were gonna miss the kick, which makes me feel bad because Kirk Cousins had a really great game and he was great on that last drive. And the field goal unit comes out. I'm like, they're gonna miss this. And it looks like it may at first, and then the refs go like, no. I'm like, oh my gosh. But I think Cardinals fans should be proud of themselves, right? This reminded me of the Bills game where last year where yeah, insane ending, but the Cardinals were down 20-7 at one point, and they won this game. That's just for me super impressive. They play the Jaguars this week. Oh man, it's probably gonna be a very one-sided ball game there in Florida. So yeah, um, just really nice win for the Cardinals and Mike Zimmer. I think his issues kind of continue in Minnesota. Mason, do you have anything to add on to? If not, I'll go to my last game.
No, you can go ahead.
So last game I have is the LA Rams and the Indianapolis Colts, a game that I thought was going to be closer. We were really hyping up this podcast, the matchup between Aaron Donald and Quentin Nelson, which was actually pretty fun to watch. There weren't any huge like highlight plays, but there was some nice matchups between them. It was pretty even, I feel like. So that was pretty neat to see those two players going at it. The Colts are such an interesting team because I always say I like the Colts, but like they have a really nice roster. Like they have a nice linebacking core. Darius Leonard I really like. DeForest Buckner's great DT. They have a great offensive line. I like Jonathan Taylor, but the secondary is kind of an issue. No wide receivers. They don't have anyone super explosive there. Um, so I don't know. The Colts are such an interesting team because I like them, but they've had a tough start to the season. They played two NFC West teams. They play the Titans this week, which I don't see how they're stopping Tennessee, and then they play Miami, which that's going to be really kind of a toss-up game. So I don't know. The Colts have kind of just been a team that is very well built, but in the NFL today, you need some explosiveness to them. I think the NFL today is more about the you need more of an explosive element than a well-built team. Like the Seahawks defense and the Chiefs defense have been pretty bad the past couple of seasons, but they've both been playoff teams because they have that explosivity of the offense. So I think that matters more. I just don't think the Colts have it. Maybe when they get T.Y. Hilton back, Carson Wentz has looked good. He's had some really nice plays. He kind of reminds me of his 2019-18 self, where he had some nice games. He wasn't top tier, but he was nice. I'll probably put him around the 17th ranked quarterback. So yeah, Colts, I'm just interested to hear what you think on them, Mason. I do like the way the Rams look though. Matthew Stafford, I thought had a pretty great game. Cooper Cup's been balling out. I've always liked Cooper Cup. I didn't think he would go to this level. He kind of reminds me of this year's Stephon Diggs, kind of this breakout wide receiver. Before Stephon Diggs had his breakout last year, people were like, yeah, he's pretty good. Then went insane. Same with Cooper Cup. Before people were like, yeah, he's pretty good. Now he's going insane. So that's great to see. Rams win a close one. They play the Buccaneers next, which is going to be just such a great game. So much talent on both of those rosters. But yeah, I think the Rams are my favorite for the NFC West. I think the Cardinals offense is a tad better, but I think the Rams defense is better than the Cardinals.
Yeah, so this Rams team pretty much looked like the same as week one for the most part.
Mhm.
Great outing by the offense. Defense struggled a little more this week than they did last week, obviously, allowing 24 points. But just talking more about the Colts, it's a very bad look for them so far because not that they're not playing good, it's just the fact they're down 0-2, and it looks like Carson Wentz might miss some games. Obviously, we expected this from Carson Wentz. I'm sorry, it just had to be said. Because Frank Reich said he didn't have just one sprained ankle, but both his ankles are sprained, which I think is like I don't know how unlucky someone can be. But Carson Wentz, prayers up to you, man. I just can't imagine what it's like being through so many injuries. That just has to suck. The fact you sprained both your ankles is at the same time is just like, how does that even happen? Like,
I do want to add something on real quick. I think this does prove that Carson Wentz is injury prone because before when he had for the Eagles, when he had that one injury against the Rams in his MVP season, people were like, oh, he was injury prone. And then he got injured in that one wild card game against the Seahawks with people like this dirty hit by Jadeveon Clowney. He's just injury prone, which sucks because injuries are part of the game. And I feel like this week goes fell. And Carson Wentz, I just think one of those players who's truly injury prone. So if you want to continue, Mason.
yeah, for sure. He's injury prone and has some of the worst luck by a quarterback in the recent years. Kind of like on our not on RG3's level, but kind of near it where like he just can't stay on
Yeah.
the field. It seems like so much talent there, but The Colts have a really tough start to the schedule. I mean, they had to play the Seahawks, Rams, and Titans through 3 weeks, so the schedule makers really didn't do them any favors with that 3 game lineup. Especially I'll talk about my next game in a little bit, but the Titans looked absolutely phenomenal this past week, so I don't think it's going to be a good look for the Colts. Especially if Jacob Eason is starting. I'm not very high on Jacob Eason. I wasn't high on him coming out of college. Um, he did not play good against the Rams, and then again, that's his first NFL regular season action. But I think if Carson Wentz stays healthy throughout the entire game, I think Colts have a really good chance of winning, which would have been a massive win for him if they could have stolen a win away from a stacked LA team going into Tennessee week 3. I think that would have been a massive win for him. But now they're 0-2, could easily fall to 0-3 after next week because if Carson Wentz isn't playing, it's not going to look good. Quentin Nelson versus Aaron Donald, I think that's going to be really cool. I don't think it's going to be talked about as much as it was during the game, but I think like 10 years down the road, there's going to be like on YouTube, there's going to be footage. It's going to be like Aaron Donald, Quentin Nelson going at or something like that. It's going to
Yeah,
blow
the
up or something
NFL
crazy.
throwback channel.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it'll be something crazy. It'll be some footage they keep for like a lot of years, and then like if they both get inducted in the Hall of Fame, they're going to be like two Hall of Famers going at it, blah blah blah, and stuff like that. It's just that type of video I could see the NFL making,
Can see
but
that.
um, but no, a great win by the Rams. Colts, honestly, they haven't even been that bad. It's just Wentz can't stay healthy. I don't see this team really doing much, and it's not a good start for him for sure.
Yeah, I think you summed up pretty well, Mason. That Aaron Donald, Quentin Nelson thing was on point. Oh my gosh, I can see them doing that. But yeah, the Rams, they won that close game, and a win's a win at the end of the
Mhm.
day. So if you want to move on to your last game.
Yeah, as I pointed to what I was just saying earlier, my third game is the Titans versus the Seahawks. Through the first half, the Titans looked like the same team they did week 1, just not being able to do anything offensively. Derrick Henry had a slow start. Seahawks offense was absolutely destroying that Titans defense. In the second half, it was like a whole new team. I have no idea what happened. I don't know what Mike Vrabel said. No idea, because that team through 6 quarters through the first NFL season, they looked horrible. And then those last 2 quarters, they absolutely turned it up. I mean, Derrick Henry finished with like 180 something yards, 3 touchdowns, vintage Derrick Henry game, um, showing he still got it. But defense really impressed me as well. They held the Seahawks to 6 points through the third, fourth, and overtime quarters. So absolutely impressive stuff from that Titans defense, which was getting a lot of hate last week. Ryan Tannehill honestly played solid, nothing crazy. I think Julio Jones had a really good game, had over 100 yards. AJ Brown really struggled. He had a couple
Mhm.
drops. Even the refs were against the Titans. I mean, this dude Julio Jones had clearly had both feet in bounds for a touchdown. They called it back, and everyone was like scratching their head, like, "How do you call that back?" But didn't matter in the end. They got the dub. But no, I think this is a big, big win for the Tennessee Titans because historically speaking, if teams fall to 0-2, they have a very small chance of making the playoffs. And now they're sitting at 1-1. They have a Colts game that they should win week 3 if Carson Wentz isn't playing, so that they can easily go to 2-1. And I think this Titans team, this is the game they needed to really get their season going, because last week it was kind of just like a fluke game almost. I don't think that's really the Tennessee Titans that this team really is. Bud Dupree honestly hasn't shown me much though. Still, I think he's still one of the worst free agent signings because of how much money he's making and his production isn't there. He's not even getting pressured, and especially on that Seahawks offensive line, it's like, dude, you got to get some pressures. But no, overall great win. Seahawks, this is a game you have to win. I mean, you're up 15 going to half. You score only 6 points. Russell Wilson, I feel like he does so much for this team, and it's yes, you can blame him for this loss, but at the end of the day, it's like how much can he really do every single week? Like his defense and other players on the offense have to give him some help. And Pete Carroll I did not like the way he called that game in the second half, or really the game in its entirety. I honestly don't think Pete Carroll. I think Tanner said this a lot. I don't think this is the Pete Carroll that we know from 5 years ago. I think this Pete Carroll is starting to. He's not adapting to the new NFL, if that makes sense. He's really not. Tyler Lockett, though, that guy he's unbelievable. I mean, dude, this dude Tyler Lockett, so underrated. I think he's the best receiver on that team. I think DK is phenomenal, but Tyler Lockett is so good. He burns everyone and he catches pretty much everything. I just love Tyler Lockett, but overall great win from the Titans.
I mean, Pete Carroll a couple of years ago in the Super Bowl did have some questionable calls. So in a way, he stayed the same. But in all seriousness, I've been saying this about Pete Carroll for about 3 to 4 years now, and it's just kind of, the Seahawks don't really have that defense. Yeah, Bobby Wagner's great. He's top tier, but that's Bobby Wagner. There's just no one else on that defense. I don't have a ton to say about this game. It was just a really fun game to watch. I think it's funny because a lot of people, including myself, have always compared like AJ Brown and DK Metcalf, and they both were underwhelming in this game. So I thought that was just kind of ironic. Julio Jones, I'm glad he broke out not only for fantasy sakes, but he looked like top tier old Julio Jones going up, making these great catches. Um, yeah, it was just a really great game. Games like this game and the Ravens Chiefs, those games like that are incredible. I just don't have a ton to say because they almost kind of speak for themselves. But I think he brought up some good points about the Titans defense or lack of it. Both of these teams, I think, are very similar. They both have really great offenses that can get you points, but the defense needs to kind of be there. So yeah, and I like how you mentioned the refs because I'm not someone who usually blames the referees, even in games where if my team loses by a bad call. But this week they were horrendous. That Cowboys Chargers game was kind of ruined by the refs. There's so many bad calls, and I was like, oh my gosh, NFL needs to really kind of fix it because this you just can't keep doing this. So yeah, I think that was well said, Mason. If you don't have anything else to say, we'll move on. So this is something that I don't know if I've ever talked on the podcast before, but I mentioned with other friends of mine. I'm going to call the O-line crisis. So I feel like whatever you go to ESPN or Fox with their sports show or Skip and Shannon or Colin Coward, whoever you listen to, I feel like people always say that blank team is not good because of offensive line. And before, and I mean before, like say even 2016, 2015, this wasn't that big of an issue. Now I feel like you can name about half of the, like at least 16 teams who do not have a good offensive line. And this is kind of concerning because with a bad offensive line, there's no running game. Quarterbacks are going to get hit, injuries are going to go up, and offensive linemen, yeah, you get some out of the draft, but there's only so many. So I don't know. Offensive line is a very key part of football, but I feel like now the demand's really high and the supply is kind of low. So I'm just kind of interested to see where this goes and where extent does it go to. I mean, do we start to see major injuries pop up more than we have? This is something I do want to touch on a bit because that's something that I did see a bit more this past week. So I think none of it has to do with teams really need to regard offensive line in a higher priority, like the Dolphins taking Panay Sewell over Jalen Waddle. Like you just need to protect your quarterback. I mean, look, the Colts took Quentin Nelson. That offensive line was pretty great. So before we go into the week 3 kind of prediction part, I want to kind of get your thoughts on this real quick, Mason.
Yeah, I just think a lot of teams value explosiveness over fundamentals, like
Ooh.
and certain points. Like at the end of the day, offensive line, I think, besides quarterback, is probably the most important aspect of the game. Just because without a good offensive line, your team's going to struggle. But I also think, like you said, I think it's just the talent. In some cases, I think for every good offensive lineman in the draft, there's probably 3 good defensive linemen, which is
Hmm.
obviously not a balanced ratio. In the so far from this draft, you've probably seen a lot of edge rushers who have really been solid, and then Penei Sewell and Rashawn Slater are really the only offensive linemen that have really done anything through the first couple weeks. Also, yeah, like you said, it's just teams need to pay more attention to it. I also think with this happening, and I agree with you, I think there's a lot of bad offensive linemen. I think it's gonna start translating into teams looking for more mobile quarterbacks, opposed to the traditional pocket passer. I think obviously the transition is already being made, but I think it's gonna happen more and more. Unless you're a team like the Patriots who value offensive linemen, they took Mac Jones because they know they have a great offensive line.
Mhm.
They have a stable offensive line. But then you have the team like the Bengals who Joe Burrow is mainly a pocket passer. He's not known for his mobility. And they time and time and again have ignored the offensive line position and probably will continue to do so in the future. And what did that get you? Joe Burrow had a horrible game last week, 3 picks, and he had one of the worst injuries you can get in football, which is a torn ACL and MCL, which is absurd that he got that through 6 weeks. But yeah, it's kind of like guys like Lamar Jackson. I mean, his offense line has been horrible, but at least like he can move around and
They're
make plays in the
better
run.
against the Chiefs. They're better.
Yeah, they played a lot better than they did week one, that's for sure. But then you look at guys like Kyler Murray, if the offensive line breaks down, he can scramble, make some plays with his legs. Same with Josh Allen. So I think it's more of just transitioning from pocket passers to mobile guys, and teams really just don't pay attention to the offensive line position. Like the Cardinals, before they traded for Rodney Hudson, they neglected the offensive line for like 10 years. Like I don't remember the last time the Cardinals had a good offensive line. I don't remember the last time the Vikings had a good offensive line. It's just like these teams ignore them for so long, and it just doesn't work out in the NFL.
I wonder if we're gonna go in transition. Will we see more mobile quarterbacks? And since we see more of those mobile quarterbacks rise, I wonder if we see more kind of defensive edge rushers get taken. And I wonder if O-line, I don't say gets phased out, but just not something that's drafted as high. It's gonna be interesting to see. For the last couple of minutes here, Mason, what week 3 games are you excited for? For those who do not know, I do an NFL prediction series where I go game by game and take my picks. I'll mention a couple of the ones here I'm excited about, but if you want to go more into detail, check out that series. So Mason, what games are you excited for this week?
So I think the first game that everyone's gonna have their eyes glued to, it's gonna be an afternoon game. No
Mm,
idea why it's not a primetime game. I don't know who was making the schedule and they're like, nah, this game doesn't need primetime. The Buccaneers versus the Los Angeles Rams. I think this could be the NFC championship matchup
ooh,
coming
yeah.
January. Like this, both these teams, like I don't know how they didn't decide to make this game prime time, because I think this is gonna be a great game. You have two stellar defenses, you have two stellar offenses. Like both these teams have great overall teams. Like there's no, like you said about the Seahawks Titans earlier, like they both have good offenses, crappy defenses. Both these teams have great defense, great offense, good coaching. But I'm really excited to see. I think this is Stafford's first tough test against an elite defense. So we're gonna see how he does, because the Bears, honestly, that defense isn't as what it was a couple of years ago at that secondary, and then the Colts defense, their secondary isn't good as well. But this Buccaneers defense is legit. We're gonna see how Vita Vea causes chaos, see how Stafford responds to that. And then Tom Brady, I mean, he's on pace to have his best year yet. I mean, he has been absolutely phenomenal. It's like, does this guy age? Like, what does this guy do to not like? I mean, he even looks younger than he did a couple years ago. It doesn't even make sense. Like, how does this dude look younger and play better? Like, incredible stuff from Mr. Tom Brady. I think this guy's gonna play for a lot more years, which is ridiculous to say considering he's 43. But yeah, very excited that game. And then another game I'm excited for, I believe, is the Monday night game, Eagles versus Cowboys.
Oh no.
I always like the NFC East rivalries, just because I feel like every team like genuinely like does not like each other. Like I feel like in like the AFC South, it's like there's not like any like big rivalries, but then you go to the NFC, so it's like literally every single team does not like each other. And whoever wins this game will probably have the lead for the NFC East, which is always big because we always know that whoever's leading is always changing week by week. But yeah, Jalen Hurts versus Dak Prescott. Very excited to watch that game.
Yeah, I think the Eagles are not gonna win that game. I don't think it'll be particularly close. I'm excited for the Rams, Buccaneers. People are kind of like, whoa, about Tom Brady. Yeah, it's like really neat, but it kind of makes sense for me. I mean, he's really smart and he's always had a good arm. So it kind of makes sense to me. He's just been someone who's just been like passing people's expectations. He just goes above and beyond. I predicted the Rams to win that game, but it's gonna be a coin flip. I think it'll be a lower scoring game. I think it'll be one of those games that's like kind of these classic NFL games. I think the final score will be like 23-20. I think it'll be very much a battle of a game. I think it'll be. Do you remember last year's Ravens Titans playoff game, like that back and forth game? That's
Yeah.
kind of what I'm getting vibes of. I don't think it'll be that high scoring. I could see it going either way. And then we have the early tank bowl with the Falcons Giants, which defense is going to play less terrible. um, I think I forgot who I paid. Who do you have winning that game, Mason? Because I could see Saquon Barkley going off. I hope he does, but I could also see Matt Ryan carving up the Giants.
I'll probably give the Giants a slight edge just because I think their defense is a little bit better than the Falcons because at least the Giants defense does have some playmakers. I mean, the Falcons defense has like Deion Jones, Grady Jarrett, and then we all know they lost Keanu Neal to the Cowboys. And their secondary is awful. And honestly, Matt Ryan hasn't been that good. The offensive line has been horrible, and Daniel Jones hasn't been too bad. So I think Giants probably take the win. And Falcons, yeah, like you said, early tank bowl. I think Falcons, if they lose this game, they're going to be in contention for another top 5 pick come April.
Yeah, I think it's gonna be a high scoring game. And then I'm also excited for the Saints Patriots, kind of two different styles of offenses. I think that'll be fun to see. I really like New England this year. I think I'm higher on them than most people. The Bills play Washington, so I think they go to 2-1. If the Patriots win, I think they will. They'll go to 2-1. So I'm interested to see how that game goes. The Saints, they're kind of flip flop. The Saints remind me of last year's Patriots. Last year's Patriots went 7-9. They're up and down. That's how I see the Saints. Kind of they could win every game, they could lose every game. That's just kind of how I see them. So I also have the Bengals upsetting the Steelers because I know that the Bengals offensive line is terrible. I mean, it is terrible. Like I think maybe someone could go out there and block better than the Bengals. And the Steelers defense line is great, but I don't know. I feel like Joe Burrow bounces back and wins. What
Yeah.
do you think? Because I don't know. Burrow doesn't seem like the guy who's going to get having a bad game against a great defense in Chicago, multiple picks, and then go out there and do the same thing. I think that the Bengals win.
Something I like about Burrow is this he's like pretty professional. He doesn't let emotions get to him too much, and he comes out and plays really good pretty much every week. Last week, I think, was just like he threw 3 picks in a row, and I think that was just I think that was mainly because he was just trying to do too much. I think he was just not relying on other players around him, which is completely normal for a second-year quarterback. And it's kind of like his second half of his rookie year because he really didn't play
Hmm.
much, so he's still learning a lot. So I really can't put so much blame on him because I feel like he was just trying to do a little too much, trying to get the Bengals to rally up and get that win. But yeah, really, if the Steelers have injury problems on that defense again, I see no reason why the Bengals can't come around and steal that win because Jamar Chase, T. Higgins, Tyler Boyd have all looked fantastic. Joe Mixon has looked pretty solid through 2 weeks. Disappointed last week, as I said. Joe Mixon, typical, has a great week one, then kind of stumbles the next few weeks. But yeah, I can definitely see the Bengals taking the win there. And that Saints game, I think, is going to be really cool too because I have no idea what the Saints team is. Week one, I'm like, dang, this team is really good. And then second week, I'm like, is this like the 2019 Buccaneers with Jameis Winston? Like, what's going on here? Like, it made no sense to me how Jameis Winston like went from like an MVP caliber player to it's Jameis Winston in a matter of a week. So yeah, we'll see what gets going there. Alvin Kamara needs to have a big game for them to win, I think. But overall, really excited for both those games.
Yeah, I think Saints Patriots. I think Kamara will have a good game. Just Bill Belichick against Sean Payton. That's fun. Not oh man, I feel bad for Zach Wilson going to Denver in Mile High. Oh no. I want to talk about Zach Wilson real quick. Um, I feel like that, yeah, he didn't play well, but he's a rookie. He's a gunslinger. Year two matters. I feel like that. I don't know if you feel this way, Mason, but I feel like with this rookie QB class, people are very defensive. Because there's people feel like Trevor Lawrence had 3 picks, feel like Zach Wilson had 4. I'm like, what? I'm not even people are not even talking about Wilson. I feel like people are very defensive about these rookie quarterbacks, which is interesting. They've all struggled except Mac Jones. Mac Jones has looked nice. Whenever I turn on the game, he's always playing a really nice, accurate pass. Wilson, I think the thing with him is that I just think he needs to kind of get a bit more just comfortable. I think the main thing that just is this progress. You need to see them go up, and you're gonna have tough games like that. Also, it is the Patriots. I think some people have forgotten that the Patriots are still a pretty great team. Even they don't have Tom Brady, but yeah, people are very defensive about the rookie QBs. And I mean, you have Trevor Lawrence against the Cardinals Jaguars. I think he'll play well, like 2 touchdowns, maybe a pick. I don't know. The Cardinals defense, I mean, I think the Cardinals win that game, but I could see Lawrence making it close to a degree in the first half, like maybe 20-14, and the Cardinals kind of win 34-17, something like that. But
Yeah, I
yeah,
think the big thing why people are so defensive is just because like I think if you look at like who's being defensive, it's Jaguars, Jets, and even like Bears fans. They've been really defensive about Justin Fields throughout this entire process. And I think the big thing is like
they're
look at the
just bad
Patriots.
teams.
You look at the Patriots. I know a lot of Patriots fans are like, yeah, Mac Jones, honestly, he could suck, but it is what it is. And I think that's just because the Patriots like have had good quarterbacks, and then you look at the Bears, Jaguars,
Oh,
and Jets, and if we're just being honest, they haven't had really anything going on in that quarterback position for a very long time. So I think they're kind of being defensive because they're like, we need this guy to be good, or else we are screwed again. Like, like you look at the like Justin Fields he played a little bit when Andy Dalton went out. He did not look good. Bears fans defended him, saying, "Oh, he barely played, whatever." Zach Wilson, 4 picks. I mean, it's not good. And then they're like, "Well, he's better than Trevor Lawrence, and he's yeah, blah blah blah." And then you have Lawrence who threw 2 picks and 3 picks in the first 2 weeks, and then they're like, "Well, he's still the number one pick, blah blah blah." And I think it's just you got to give these guys time.
yeah.
That's 2 weeks in. Got to give them time. I'm a Trevor Lawrence fan. I can acknowledge he played bad. Zach Wilson played bad. Justin Fields played bad. Literally, the only one who's played somewhat good is Mac Jones. Trey Lance obviously has barely played. But yeah, Mac Jones has literally been the only one that's played good. Even Davis Mills did not look good in that Browns game. He had a touchdown, but he also had like a pretty bad interception, like 9 of 18.
I mean, that's just Davis Mills.
Yeah, but it's just like you got to give these guys some time, and especially because especially the first 2 picks, because usually when we see rookie quarterbacks, they have, kind of the mentor guy in front of them. The Jets really don't have that. They have James Morgan, who's a second-year guy. He's not a veteran leadership to really mentor Zach Wilson. And then the Jaguars have CJ Beathard. I'm sorry, Trevor Lawrence should not be taking advice from CJ Beathard. But yeah, I think it's just you got to give these guys some time.
Yeah, it's almost good that they're throwing picks in a way because they're going deep. That's good. You want them. Now, if this was year 3 or 4, that's concerning, but you want them to almost iron it out. The way you said, "Oh, we've been screwed with quarterbacks," reminds me of that one scene from The Office. I'm like, be their leader, go out and put on a brave face. It is over. We are screwed. But yeah, I'm also excited for the Packers 49ers game. I have Green Bay winning, but I think it'll be close. And no matter what happens, we'll be here to cover it. Thank you all for joining us for the week 2 recap. We'll see y'all next week for week 3. Until then, have a good one, everyone. Take care.